The morning began with the sound of knives against wood, the small rhythm of habit. I was slicing fennel thin enough to see light through it, the kitchen windows fogged with February breath. Outside, Chicago was colorless, a sketch of concrete and steam. Inside, the air smelled of butter and lemon peel, a quiet proof that life could be soft if you worked for it. I had always believed in work, that it could turn love into something you could hold, that if you made something beautiful enough, a dish, a room, a moment, people would forgive your other imperfections. The fennel curled on the cutting board, white threads like veins. I pressed them into a bowl of ice water, watched them open like flowers. There was comfort and control, even when everything else felt unsteady. The phone buzzed. My mother's name appeared, the text so simple it carried weight. "Dinner at 7, we have things to discuss." I stared at it for a full minute, as if meaning would rearrange itself with time. There was no greeting, no question, just an expectation, as always. I wiped my hands on a towel, smoothed my hair. The smell of lemon followed me out the door. The restaurant I ran sat on a narrow street in West Loop, a converted textile warehouse with exposed brick, hanging bulbs, and the kind of minimalism people mistook for peace. It wasn't success in the way my parents imagined, not flashy or loud, but it was mine. The staff called me Chef Lila now, a name with weight, with edges. Not Lila, dear, not our daughter who could have done something practical, but Chef. By the time I arrived for dinner, the sky had already turned the color of bruised glass. My parents lived in Lincoln Park, in the same house where I grew up, 3 stories of beige comfort and emotional drafts. The lights inside were too bright, the air too still. They had set the table like it was Christmas, silver cutlery, cloth napkins folded like swans. My father at the head, my mother pouring wine with the precision of someone hosting a stranger. When I walked in, they smiled as if rehearsed. "Lila," my mother said, standing to kiss my cheek. "You look tired," she added softly, a sentence that sounded like concern but wasn't. My father gestured toward the chair beside him. "We've been talking about the wedding," he said. "Sit, we have some questions." The word questions meant judgment. It always did. I sat. The air smelled of roast lamb, mint, and a kind of restraint that lived in this house. I noticed the clink of silverware, the slow ticking of the clock above the mantel. That sound had followed me through every meal of childhood. My mother smiled too widely. "Your fiancé, Daniel, yes? He seems nice. A bit artistic, maybe? Not very stable, don't you think?" The way she said stable carried years of meaning. Dependable, financially safe, predictable. "He's a chef, too," I said, "at a smaller place downtown." Her eyebrows lifted, not curiosity, but quiet disappointment. My father cut the lamb, the knife scraped like a pause in conversation. "Your restaurant's been doing well," he said. "We were wondering, have you thought about merging it, expanding, bringing someone in to help manage it?" I already knew where it was going. My brother Thomas, the responsible one, with his degree in finance and his endless bad ideas. He mentioned, my mother said, as if reading a script, that he'd love to help. It could be a family venture. You know, build something together. Together, the same word they used when they borrowed money from me for his startup. When they asked me to support him through rehab. When they told me family comes first, even if it costs you everything. I set my fork down slowly. "The restaurant's mine," I said, "and Daniel's. We've worked for it." My father's voice hardened just slightly. "Don't get defensive, Lila. We're trying to help you." Help. That word always felt like a leash. They talked through dinner, about guest lists, budgets, venues. Every topic carried an undertone of control. Who would speak at the ceremony? Who would pay for what? Whether Daniel's family fit the tone. And beneath it all, the quiet message, "We made you. You owe us." Halfway through dessert, my mother reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were cold, manicured, light as threat. "Lila," she said softly, "we just want what's best for you. You have to admit, sometimes you make emotional decisions." I looked at her, then at the table, at the flawless white plates, the neatly folded napkins, the life I was supposed to return to. And I felt something small and solid form inside me, not anger, not rebellion, just refusal. I stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor. "Dinner was lovely," I said, my voice even, "but I have prep early tomorrow." My mother frowned. "You just got here." "I know." I picked up my coat. Behind me, I could hear my father sigh, that deep, disappointed sound I'd spent a lifetime trying to avoid. On the porch, the air was cold and metallic. I stood for a moment, feeling the city's pulse beneath the quiet of the neighborhood. Through the window, I saw my parents talking, their silhouettes sharp against the warm light. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt, just distance. The kind that wasn't punishment, but protection. When I got home, the kitchen smelled faintly of lemon and fennel, the scent of something that was mine. I washed my hands, watched the water run clear, then turned off the lights. In the dark, I could hear the city, muffled, alive, untamed. It felt like a beginning. The morning after that dinner, I woke up before dawn. The city was still half asleep, a pale blue silence pressing against the windows. Chicago always felt colder in the hours before sunrise, when the streetlights hummed faintly and the world smelled faintly of exhaust and wet pavement. I stood in my kitchen, barefoot, the tile cool beneath my feet. The counter was littered with fragments from the night before. Fennel leaves, a few drops of lemon juice, a crumpled towel I hadn't put away. Small evidence of normalcy, of control. When I turned on the kettle, the sound of boiling water filled the room, small, steady, human. I needed that kind of sound, the kind that didn't talk back. My phone buzzed. A message. From my mother. Please check the mail today. We've sent something special for you and Daniel. Don't overreact. It's meant with love. Love. That word again, soft on the outside, sharp in the middle. I made my tea slowly. Jasmine. It smelled like memory, the kind my mother used to brew when I was a teenager studying late, when she still pretended to understand me. The steam rose in tendrils. My reflection in the window looked like smoke. I left for the restaurant early, carrying the faint ache behind my ribs that only family could leave. By the time I arrived, the city was bright and loud again. Delivery trucks backed into alleys. The scent of roasted coffee drifted through West Loop. My sous chef, Mateo, was already there, unpacking boxes of produce. Morning, chef, he said. You're early. I couldn't sleep, I admitted, tying my apron. Might as well make use of it. He smiled. You're always working. Maybe try not to solve your life through mise en place today? I make no promises. We shared a quiet laugh, the kind built on exhaustion and shared routine. Mateo had become something like family, but one that didn't cost me blood. Just effort, just trust. By mid-morning, the mail arrived. I opened it between deliveries, bills, menus, an invitation in heavy cream cardstock. My name in elegant gold cursive. My stomach tightened. I didn't even have to open it to know. Inside, embossed lettering, you are cordially invited to the engagement celebration of Thomas and Evelyn. My brother, his fiancée. The date printed neatly at the bottom, 2 weeks from today. The same weekend as our food festival launch, the one Daniel and I had spent months organizing, a chance to feature independent chefs, the kind of event that could change careers. A folded note was tucked inside, written in my mother's looping hand. We're so proud of both our children. We thought it would be beautiful to have both milestones happen together, family and business, side by side. We've invited some of your investors too. It will be wonderful exposure. Love, Mom. Exposure. For them, for Thomas, for whatever story they were crafting now, the same one where I was a footnote to his redemption arc. I stared at the invitation until the words blurred. The paper smelled faintly of perfume, gardenia, and old guilt. When Daniel walked in, wiping his hands on his apron, he caught the look on my face. Bad news? I handed him the invitation. He read it once, then again, slower. His jaw tightened. They're holding it that weekend? He asked quietly. I nodded. Apparently it's wonderful exposure. He exhaled long and low. You think they did it on purpose? I don't think, I know. We stood there in silence, the hum of the fridge filling the space between us. I felt his hand brush mine, not a gesture of comfort, but recognition. We didn't need to say more. That night, after service, I went home and sat at my small dining table, the invitation laid out like evidence. The apartment was warm, the kind of quiet that made small sounds louder, the clock ticking, the faint creak of wood, the city sighing outside. I poured myself a glass of wine, something dry and clean, and read the note again. The handwriting was beautiful, almost tender. My mother always took care to make cruelty look graceful. I thought about how much of my life had revolved around their approval. Every award, every headline, every menu. I used to imagine their pride as a kind of light that would finally reach me if I worked hard enough. But maybe it had never been light. Maybe it was a reflection of something else, something I'd mistaken for warmth. I took the invitation, folded it in half, then again, until it fit perfectly in my palm. Then I dropped it into the trash. The next morning, the phone rang before I could finish my coffee. My mother. Lila, darling, she began, her tone already sharp around the edges. I hope you've received the invitation. I have, I said. And? I won't be attending. Silence. the kind that hums with disbelief. Lila, she said finally, you can't not come. It's family. It's your brother's future. I have an event that weekend, I replied. My voice was calm, even. This isn't about business, she snapped. You're always hiding behind your work, always running from your responsibilities. Responsibilities? I repeated. Like paying for his last 2 projects, covering your mortgage last year, taking care of Dad's hospital bills? Her breath caught. That's not fair. I'm not being unfair, I said. Just accurate. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the faint tick of the wall clock again, steady as pulse. Finally, her voice softened. You'll regret this, she said. One day you'll wish you hadn't pushed us away. I swallowed hard. Maybe, but not today. Then I hung up. The click of the line ending sounded cleaner than I expected. That night, Daniel came over after closing his kitchen. He brought bread and olive oil, simple things. We sat on the couch, eating quietly. The city glowed outside, pale orange, endless. You okay? He asked after a while. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm starting to be. He nodded. You're allowed to stop giving them everything. I know, I said softly. I just don't know what that looks like yet. He smiled, a tired kind of tenderness in his eyes. Maybe it looks like this, just eating bread, breathing, not explaining yourself. I laughed quietly. That sounds impossible. Good, he said. Then it's probably worth doing. Later, when he'd gone and the apartment was still again, I stood at the window. The streetlights made the snow look like ash, soft and slow. Somewhere, my family was planning a party I wouldn't attend. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed them a reason. The city moved quietly beneath me, breathing, shifting, alive. And I thought, maybe I could start over too. Not by leaving, but by staying on my own terms. The week before the festival felt like standing on the edge of a knife. Everything sharp, glittering, and one wrong move away from disaster. I barely slept. The restaurant pulsed with movement, deliveries, tastings, endless calls from vendors. My clipboard became a second skin. Mateo followed me everywhere, calm in the chaos, a quiet counterpoint to my constant motion. Daniel handled the external press. He was good at that. The face, the warmth. I stayed behind the scenes, the structure beneath the gloss. That's always been my role. The scaffolding no one notices until it's gone. Still, I couldn't escape the weight pressing in from the outside. My family had found a way to turn silence into spectacle. Every day I saw the new social media posts, engagement photos, glossy and choreographed, my mother's captions brimming with soft guilt. So proud of both my children this month, both achieving such incredible things. Love makes us stronger. I knew what she meant. It wasn't support, it was possession. The comments flooded in. People tagged me, old classmates, colleagues. Some asked if I'd be at the engagement dinner. Others assumed I was catering it. I didn't reply, not once. 2 nights before the festival, I found myself at the restaurant long after closing. The air smelled faintly of caramelized onions and disinfectant, the strange sweetness of exhaustion. I sat at the bar, scrolling through last-minute invoices when the door opened behind me. Thomas's voice filled the space, smooth as always. Nice place, Lila. I froze. He stood there in his perfect coat, the same brand he'd once mocked me for saving up to buy years ago. His hairstyle just right, his smile too easy. Don't tell me you're surprised, he said, walking closer. Mom said you might be here. I thought you were busy planning your party, I said without looking up. He laughed softly. You mean our celebration? You know, family success. You should come. Investors love a good story. That word again. Story. I turned then. You didn't come here to invite me again. No, he said. I came to make sure you're not going to embarrass us. The air went still. He leaned on the counter, his voice low. Look, I get that you're mad, but this event thing you're doing, the festival, Mom's worried. She thinks it's reckless. All that money, all that attention. I stared at him, the lines of his face so familiar it almost hurt. Reckless is taking money you didn't earn and calling it ambition. His expression flickered, just a second, but I saw it, the tiny fracture in his performance. You always think you're better than us, he said, but you're not. You just work harder at pretending you are. Pretending? I repeated. You think I imagined the years I spent cooking in kitchens that didn't even have air conditioning? The nights I went home too tired to stand? The savings I built one paycheck at a time? He looked away. You make everything sound like suffering. Not everyone needs to martyr themselves to feel worthy. No, I said quietly. Just the ones who had no one else to fall back on. For a long moment, we said nothing. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Finally, he straightened up. I hope this festival is worth it, he said, because if it fails, no one will remember the effort, just the name attached to it. He walked out before I could answer. The door closed softly behind him, but it felt like a slam. The next morning, the city was gray and heavy with rain. The streets gleamed like oil, and the air tasted metallic. Perfect weather for beginnings. Unpredictable. Cleansing. We loaded the trucks at dawn. Boxes of ingredients, banners, crates of glassware. The smell of dough and roasted peppers filled the air. My hands shook slightly as I packed. Not fear, not exactly. Just the tension of everything leading here. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. You ready? I nodded, as I'll ever be. Good, he said. Then let's make some noise. The festival opened under a wide white tent near the waterfront. Crowds drifted in, the hum of conversation blending with the soft rhythm of music. It was beautiful. Controlled chaos, alive and breathing. I moved through it like a ghost in motion, adjusting tablecloths, tasting sauces, checking light levels. Every sense was tuned to precision, the smell of citrus and smoke, the gleam of knives on cutting boards, the weight of my apron pulling at my neck. People came, journalists, local chefs, even investors who'd once ignored my calls. And slowly I felt something shift inside me. Pride, maybe, or simply relief that the world was finally seeing what I'd built with my own hands. Then I saw them, my parents, walking in like they owned the place, my mother in pearls, my father's tie just a little too tight. Thomas followed, his fiancée holding his arm like a prize. I stopped mid-step. Mateo saw my face and froze. Daniel noticed next, his posture changing, protective, quiet. My mother smiled as she reached me. Lila, you didn't tell us how beautiful it would be. You weren't invited, I said calmly. She blinked. Oh, don't be silly. This is family. We're proud of you. Her hand brushed my arm, gentle, rehearsed. And in that touch, I felt years of guilt trying to crawl back in. But this time, it didn't find a way. Please enjoy the food, I said evenly, but I'm working, if you'll excuse me. Then I walked away, not fast, not angry, just final. Behind me, I heard her whisper something to my father, sharp and low, but I didn't turn around. That night, when the crowd thinned and the last lights dimmed, Daniel found me sitting by the water. My apron was stained, my hands raw, but my heart was steady. You did it, he said softly. I nodded. Yeah, I did. We sat in silence, the sound of waves filling the air. The sky above was vast and dark, flecked with distant light. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small beneath it. I thought about my family, their noise, their control, their constant rewriting of my story. And then I thought about this. The scent of garlic and rain, the hum of laughter, the warmth of strangers who believed in what I'd built. And I realized this was the family I'd chosen. And it was enough. The invitation arrived 3 weeks after the festival. A creamy envelope, thick and embossed, sitting neatly between unpaid invoices and a folded recipe draft. My name written in my mother's handwriting, perfect cursive, the kind that hides intent behind elegance. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I slid it open with the dull edge of a paring knife. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Thomas and Evelyn. Family seating will be arranged at the front. Family. That word again, too small to hold everything it had broken. I placed the invitation on the counter, beside a half-empty mug of cold coffee. The morning light coming through the blinds hit the gold lettering, making it glint, like something sharp pretending to be beautiful. I should have thrown it away, but instead I kept it pinned on the fridge next to a photo of my team from the festival, all of us laughing, arms around each other, grease stains on our sleeves. That photo was real. The invitation was theater. The weeks leading up to the wedding were strangely calm. My restaurant had started gaining traction, small mentions in local food blogs, a booking from a well-known critic. I should have been ecstatic. But every success came with the same quiet echo. They'll try to take this too. Mateo noticed my restlessness. One night, as we closed up, he asked, You gonna go to that thing? I shrugged, not sure. Seems like you already know the answer. He was right, of course, but something inside me couldn't let it go. Not entirely. I didn't want to attend. I didn't want to see their rehearsed affection, but I also didn't want them to think I was hiding. For once, I wanted to show up, not as the quiet, dutiful daughter they'd sculpted, but as myself. The morning of the wedding, San Francisco woke up under a strange kind of brightness. Pale sunlight filtered through fog like the world was holding its breath. I wore a black dress. Not mourning, not defiance, just simplicity. The venue was a vineyard north of the city, expensive, polished. Rows of vines stretched out like a painting, the air heavy with lavender and champagne. I parked far from the main entrance, away from the luxury cars lined like trophies. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked. The first person I saw was my mother. She looked radiant, practiced, glowing in a way that had nothing to do with joy. When she saw me, her expression flickered for half a second before settling into warmth. "Lila," she said, her tone sugar over steel. "You made it. I wasn't sure if—" "I said I'd come," I replied. She nodded, her smile tight. "You look lovely. You could have told us about your little festival sooner, you know. We might have helped." I almost laughed. "I don't think help was what you had in mind." She blinked, then turned away before she could lose control of her expression. "Don't start, Lila. Today isn't about you." "I know," I said softly. "It never is." "The ceremony was beautiful." "Of course it was." My parents knew how to orchestrate appearances. White flowers everywhere, a live quartet, champagne glasses catching the afternoon light. Thomas looked exactly like he always did, effortless, confident, untouched by the consequences of anything. When he spotted me, there was a flicker of surprise, then a smirk. I took a seat at the far edge of the family section. The vows were long, saccharine, people laughed and cried at the right moments. I watched it all like a film I'd already seen, waiting for the ending I knew too well. And then, just as the reception began, my mother approached me again, this time with my father in tow. He still carried himself like a man who believed in hierarchy, measured, distant, convinced that control was the same as love. "Lila," he said, "your brother mentioned your restaurant's been doing well." "It's doing fine." He nodded. "Good. You've always had potential. I just hope you don't let it go to waste." There it was, the compliment that wasn't. The illusion of support that always came with a reminder of how fragile it was. My mother added, "You could still partner with Thomas. He's been talking to some investors about branching out. Family ventures always perform better." I looked at both of them. "You mean you want my business under his name?" "Don't be dramatic," she said. "It's a collaboration." "It's control," I corrected. My father's voice hardened. "You're too emotional about these things. You always were." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'm just finally paying attention." Something in my tone must have startled them, because for the first time, neither had a reply. They stood there, blinking, as if I'd spoken in a language they'd forgotten. I excused myself and walked toward the vineyards. The air was cooler out there. The music from the reception faded into something distant and harmless. Rows of vines stretched endlessly, green and gold beneath the late afternoon sun. And I realized this was the same feeling I'd had the night of the festival. Freedom disguised as loneliness. Except now it didn't hurt. Behind me, the laughter of my family carried across the field. Familiar, practiced, hollow. It used to define me. Now it just reminded me how far I'd come. Mateo had texted earlier that morning, "You don't owe them anything. Just show them who you are, even if they don't look long enough to see it." He was right. I wasn't here to reconcile. I was here to end something quietly. As the sun began to set, I walked back toward the reception tent. I stopped near a table where champagne bottles gleamed in silver ice buckets. One of the servers smiled at me. She couldn't have been more than 20, nervous and alert, balancing a tray of glasses. "First wedding?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, you can always tell, huh?" I smiled faintly. I used to think people showed who they were at weddings. Turns out, they just reveal what they're willing to fake. She laughed nervously, unsure if I was joking. I took a glass from her tray and walked away. Under the string lights, I found a quiet corner and raised the glass to no one in particular. To endings. To clarity. To peace earned, not given. I took a sip, set the glass down, and left before the speeches began. The drive home was silent. The highway stretched ahead, black ribbon and headlights. In the distance, San Francisco shimmered faintly through the fog, beautiful and indifferent. For the first time, I didn't replay what I should have said. I didn't need to. They'd heard me, even if they'd never understand. 3 months passed before I heard from them again. It came as a voicemail. Short, brittle, the kind of tone my mother used when she wanted to sound composed but was bleeding underneath. "Lila, it's been a while. Your father's not well. Nothing serious, just blood pressure, stress. He keeps asking about you. Maybe you could come by, just for dinner. We don't have to talk about the past. Just come home." The word home lingered longer than it should have. Like perfume in an empty room. I played the message twice, then deleted it. But the echo of it stayed. By then, the restaurant had grown into something real. Not just profitable, but alive. There were nights when every table was full, when the clatter of cutlery and low hum of conversation felt like music written for me. I'd begun teaching one of my line cooks, a shy girl named Ava, how to plate dishes with precision, how to move with rhythm instead of panic. She reminded me of myself at 22, hungry, scared, still trying to earn permission to exist. One night, after closing, she lingered by the sink and asked quietly, "Do your parents come here often?" I almost laughed. "No, they've never been." "Oh." She hesitated. "Mine don't get what I'm doing either. They think it's a phase." I looked at her, the soft exhaustion around her eyes, the way she twisted her apron string when nervous. "You'll stop trying to make them understand," I said. "And then one day, you'll realize you don't need to." She smiled, not quite believing me yet. I understood that too. The first rain of autumn came the following week. I closed early, drove home through the slick streets of San Francisco. The city lights reflected off puddles, long strokes of gold and red, and everything smelled like wet asphalt and eucalyptus. Inside my apartment, I boiled water for tea and sat by the window. It was quiet, except for the steady rhythm of rain against glass. That sound had always calmed me, even as a child. Sometimes I wondered if that's why I became a chef, chasing that same rhythm. Something slow, constant, honest. The phone buzzed again, this time a message from my father. "I'm sorry if we've made things difficult. I was proud at the wedding. I just didn't know how to say it. Maybe we could start over." Start over, 2 words that sounded simple, but they were really asking me to erase everything that had shaped me. Still, I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance, like watching a storm that used to terrify me now softened by the horizon. I typed and erased a dozen replies before settling on, "I'm glad you're okay. Take care of yourself." Nothing more, no invitation, no reopening of old wounds. Peace wasn't something I owed them. It was something I chose to keep. A month later, I received a letter, handwritten with my mother's looping script again. Inside was a clipping from a newspaper, a food critic's review of my restaurant. 5 stars. Underlined words, an understated brilliance, the taste of restraint and liberation. Below it, a note. "I showed this to your father. He smiled. We both did. Mom." No apology. No explanation. Just a quiet acknowledgement that perhaps they'd seen me after all. I folded the letter carefully, slid it between the pages of my recipe journal. Not forgiveness, but recognition. Sometimes that's all the closure you get. On the last night of the year, I hosted a private dinner for the staff. No fancy menus, no plating tweezers, just comfort food, laughter, wine poured too generously. At midnight, we stepped outside. The fog had lifted. Fireworks bloomed over the bay, distant, reflected in the glass storefronts and puddles along the street. Ava leaned against the doorway, looking up. "You ever think about what's next?" I smiled. "I used to. Now I just think about what's here." She nodded, not fully understanding, but that was okay. She would someday. Later, when everyone had gone, I stayed behind to clean. The chairs stacked neatly, the floor shining under dim light. I turned off the last switch, and for a moment the silence felt whole. I stepped outside. The air smelled faintly of smoke and salt. In the distance, the sea murmured against the rocks, steady, unbothered, eternal. I closed my eyes and breathed. The girl who once begged to be seen was gone. The woman standing here no longer asked for permission. Somewhere behind me, my phone buzzed again, probably another message from my mother or maybe a reservation request. I didn't check. I let the night stay quiet. And in that quiet, for the first time in my life, I felt entirely, beautifully free. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just the sound of a locked door you never open again.